Aren't we all glad we're here? Aren't we glad this building is here? Aren't we glad our businesses are here, our families are safe, our jobs are here, and there's air conditioning. So I think it really does put things in perspective. I think these moments help remind us of how precious our lives are and what's really important. So I'm just so glad you're all here and everyone's in one piece. With that, for those of you that don't know me, my name is Heather Doyle. I'm just in short order going to become your president. I can promise you I will not do as good of a job as Janine Amick. That is impossible, but I'll do the very best that I can. It is my pleasure to introduce to you Chief Melanie Bevan of the Bradenton Police Department. She became the chief of BPD in February of 2016. She served the St. Petersburg Police Department for 29 years prior to her selection as chief of Bradenton. Chief Bevan earned her bachelor's degree in criminal justice in 1997, her master's degree in public administration in 2001, and her doctorate of education degree in organizational leadership in 2011. She is a 2005 graduate of the 219th session of the Federal Bureau of Investigation National Academy, and in 2012 was one of 13 law enforcement leaders nationwide chosen to attend the Anti-Defamation League National Counterterrorism Seminar for Police Executives, which was held in Israel. Other noteworthy accomplishments include co-authoring a 2012 article published by Police Chief Magazine entitled "Shave Seconds, Increase Safety: Innovative Deployment Practices for Critical Equipment Increases Overall Safety," following the deaths of 3 St. Petersburg police officers within a 30-day period. Out of all of her accomplishments, however, she is most proud of her 2 sons, who just began their first semesters at Florida Gulf Coast University. I can tell you that resumes can tell you a lot about a person, but I know Chief Bevan. Chief Bevan is a leader. Please give a warm Kiwanis welcome to Chief Melanie Bevan.
Thank you, Heather. I appreciate that. I think I'm probably the taller of all your speakers here today, so I'll get that up there. So Sir Edmund Burke said, "All that is necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing." Evil exists in our world. There is perhaps no one more aware of this fact than the modern police officer, those sworn to serve and protect and who confront evil every day. Those are the words I opened with as the speaker for the Manatee County Law Enforcement Memorial back in May. And following that speech, I heard from several individuals who said I should share that message with more people because it's an important message. But I might have ignored them for purposes of my talk here today if I'd listened to Heather, which I didn't. Because law enforcement, particularly BPD, has a lot of good things to tell you about, a lot of programs, a lot of wonderful things going on in the community that you'd probably rather hear about. And of course, then we had Armageddon, and I could probably sit up here and exchange discussion items with you on that for about an hour. But then this past Saturday here in Bradenton, I attended my second funeral, a line of duty death funeral in as many months, and paid my respects to Hardy County Deputy Julie Bridges, who was killed last week in an on-duty cruiser accident. And just last month, I attended the funerals of Kissimmee Sergeant Sam Howard and Officer Matthew Baxter, who were gunned down in the very streets that they had spent careers keeping safe. Kissimmee Police Department is about the size as BPD, and their city, about the same size as ours, a little bigger, has a lot of similarities to Bradenton. And so it occurred to me, if I didn't take this very coveted opportunity to remind you all, from a personal standpoint, what law enforcement is facing every day, then who else would? Because my fear is that Americans are becoming accustomed, almost numb, to the loss of our brothers and sisters in blue across the country, and starting to take their acts of heroism and bravery and self-sacrifice for granted. So I just decided it's too important of a message for me not to share, and I was pretty convinced none of you would have the courage to get up here and shove me off to the side, because I'm carrying a gun. So here's some of it. Over the course of our history, there have been an honored few who have been called by the Lord to make the ultimate sacrifice. 2016 was a particularly rough year for law enforcement. 140 brave souls lost their lives, and while this is only a 6% increase over the past year, death by gunfire was up 59%, 62 officers to be exact. Noteworthy, in 2016, 5 officers were ambushed and killed in a single incident in Dallas, Texas, which marked the deadliest day for law enforcement since 9/11. 2017 is rolling along right now with 98 deaths. I put that number in there yesterday, and another was added to it this morning, so make it 99. Noteworthy, Florida is tied with Texas right now for the highest number of officers killed this year at 9. All these fallen heroes were men and women of honor, men and women called to duty, to service, to sacrifice. Officers who bravely and selflessly answered that call, who laid down their lives for their fellow citizens, for their friends. There is no higher calling than this. Many of the best parts of America's history would have been impossible without the police. All the freedoms we enjoy, freedom of speech, freedom of worship, freedom from fear, sit on a foundation of public safety. Now, those aren't my words. I wish they were. They were spoken by New York City Police Commissioner Bill Bradenton, and while it's not Shakespeare or anything poetic, it's one of those quotes that stays with you a while. Think about it. When Americans get up and pour their coffee and get ready for work and leave to face the day, we all do so under an umbrella of freedom that is fostered by the knowledge that we are all a 3-digit phone call away from getting help when we need it the most. And for the most part, it's a truism. Crime rates in this country have dropped dramatically, almost 50%, according to the FBI, over the last 2 decades. Yet surveys show that most Americans believe that crime is actually on the rise. Even more troubling is the fact that during the same time period, almost half of all violent crime and a third of property crime went unreported. When surveyors asked why, respondents reported saying that they believed that the police would not or could not do anything to help. Now that troubles me. It troubles me a lot, because I know we can help, and I know we do help. After all, those 9 Florida officers who have died so far this year did so while fulfilling their sworn oath to help. Those men and women who gave their communities their last full measure of devotion. For those heroes, all we can do is remember and honor them, take care of their families, and rededicate ourselves to the cause in which they gave their life. Which means figuring out if we can do more to fix this in the future, how we can look at each other across this chasm of trust and try to find a way to make our feelings match our reality. So let's go back to Bill Bratton's words, but let's also shift the focus a little bit. When I get up in the morning, and have my coffee along with everyone else who wears a badge, we're not thinking of the blanket of public safety that protects our freedom. We're thinking of what we're going to do to provide that blanket. In truth, when it comes to preparing for our workday, our experience is a little different than most of you all. For most, it's about choosing what you're going to wear. Man may be picking out a tie, a woman, nice pair of shoes. As officers go, most of us have one choice every morning, and when we put it on, we are certainly not thinking about style. Our uniform actually has its own history, and it was created with a style intended to make a statement and not the statement most people associate it with today, which is a reminder of the military. I can see that. Actually, the very first police uniforms were worn in England way before the Revolutionary War here in America. And they chose blue as the color to create a sharp distinction from what the military wore, which was the color red. They wanted the uniform to make the statement that police are not part of the military and don't exist to fight a war, but rather to serve and protect people. The uniform was never intended to intimidate or set us apart from the people we protect. It was meant to signal that we are aggressors, that we are not aggressors, we are defenders. Most of us also put on a ballistic vest every day. We go to work. I didn't wear mine today. I consider this a safe crowd. Because we enter this profession recognizing that there are people out there who want to hurt us. No offense, but there's not really very many people outside of law enforcement who think about that between their second cup of coffee and their commute to the office. There is a gravity in our daily routine that truly doesn't exist in other vocations. Most people leave for work hoping to avoid conflict throughout the day. We go to work intentionally looking for conflict in hopes of finding it before it finds anyone else. And many of us go to police funerals and memorials year after year after year, and they serve to remind us that the next time we put on that badge could be the last time we put it on. And that every time we leave for work, there's a possibility that we just might not come home. And that's a burden not just for us, but also for our loved ones. Some of you in this audience most likely struggle to understand why someone would knowingly choose a profession that is as inherently as dangerous as law enforcement, a profession that may require you to sacrifice your life for the protection of others. I can tell you that those of us in uniform could not imagine doing anything else. And we know that our community is grateful that there are those among us who choose to be the guardians. Motivational speakers like to use the term carpe diem, French for seize the day. The fundamental concept is to live each moment as if it's your last. In our line of work, that's not an abstract. It's a very concrete part of our daily existence. But through all that stoicism, we are all still very human. In fact, the human condition is a very real part of all of our days because of one foundational truth. We don't get to have a bad day because our job is all about helping people when they are potentially having the worst day of their lives. It's about putting our lives on the line for people who are most likely strangers to us. Didn't get enough sleep? Too bad. Had a fight with a spouse before work? Don't think about it. Just don't feel like going in today because last weekend you worked 72 hours straight and still have no electricity at your house because of Hurricane Irma? Well, suck it up, Buttercup. Your partner needs you there or he'll be going it alone, and heaven forbid something happens to him. Much like everyone else in the workforce, we struggle with job satisfaction. Some of it is linked to negative portrayals of police in the media. And even more of those feelings come directly from interactions with the public who disrespect officers simply because they wear the uniform. Being superheroes and fighting crime and disorder is a difficult enough task to train and prepare my officers for. But when you feel as though you are fighting against an entity that seeks to demonize you, it's truly demoralizing. But most of those of us still put on our uniforms every day, with a relatively low percentage ever deciding to quit. Attrition in the law enforcement profession is surprisingly lower than most every other job. Moreover, police attrition speaks to the retiring of veteran officers who are replaced by the next generation, which is a good thing. So despite all those challenges, most of us, over 90% of us who become police officers remain police officers for the balance of our careers. And the reason why is the same reason why we sometimes feel dissatisfaction and why we are willing to sacrifice our lives. The reason really hasn't changed since the beginning of policing. It's our humanity, our connection to our neighbors, our connection to our loved ones, our connection to our communities, and our continued hope to help create and shape a world for them that is safe. It's a compressed conflict because our frustration isn't rooted in our dissatisfaction with our job conditions, our pay, our benefits. It's rooted in our desire to want to do better, to be better, and help create communities that are better and safer. And the numbers say we're achieving those goals, but we always want to do better. We always strive for a level of perfection that is unrealistic, but it doesn't mute our attempts to make it real. And so while the uniforms and the equipment may give the appearance that we're arming ourselves for some epic battle, those of us who wear these badges proudly know that our most effective weapon in our job is our compassion. Compassion for the people we serve, compassion for the people we pursue, compassion for the people who are having the worst day of their lives right in front of us. Every officer killed in the nation is memorialized in granite at the Police Officer Memorial in Washington, D.C. If you've never been there, the next time you get up to D.C., I encourage you to go. It's an incredible place. I have visited that place more times than I care to pay honor to colleagues and even personal friends who have died. This year, in fact, I will be attending the National Memorial in D.C. with members of my department as the name of Officer Bennett, who was the first Bradenton Police Department officer killed in the line of duty in 1934, is memorialized on this wall after being omitted for the past 83 years. I spent some time with his family this last May. It took us, I got to BPD and started asking questions, and we realized that maybe we hadn't done all we could for those who had preceded us, and made some phone calls and actually found the family of Officer Bennett, invited them down to the Manatee Memorial, had a small reception following, and 83 years later, we thanked the brother, the great uncle, and the cousin of that officer, and assured them that even after all this time, that his ultimate sacrifice to the city of Bradenton still mattered and would forever and finally be memorialized for all to see in D.C. And it was quite an important moment for us. So I'm acutely aware on a very deep and personal level that behind each of those etchings is a person, someone whose warm touch some still wish they could feel, whose smile would light up a room, and whose voice many can still hear. These officers, all of them, gave real people out there a life that was full of love and laughter and friendship and guidance, with each name representing a distinct and unique individual whose most striking similarity is that they were taken from us too soon. Now, I've attended a lot of police funerals in my 30-year career. Somewhat ashamed to say, too many to count. My very first one in 1987, right here in Manatee County, as a rookie police officer, I was forced to go to show me firsthand the dangers of this profession. The lesson taught to me by the sight of Trooper Jeffrey Young's casket, surrounded by thousands of mourners, something I never forgot. His death taught me about life, and it would forever and profoundly change how I would police, perhaps contributing as to why I'm standing before you today. In law enforcement, there is nothing more devastating than the loss of a fellow officer. We all understand that an attack on law enforcement represents a tear in the very fabric of our communities. And to stand alongside us sends a loud, clear, and unified message to the small, dangerous element of our society. I will tell you that we appreciate the unyielding support of the thousands of people throughout the city and county who stand by our side in good times and bad. I haven't been to a funeral yet in our state where I haven't seen the governor present, and that support matters a great deal to us. He was even there this past Saturday after all that he had gone through with the hurricane. And although I recognize today I've been a bit of a Debbie Downer, my last request is that we leave from here filled with pride for the service and sacrifice of those who have fallen, knowledge that their service made a difference, and hope that their names will be the last to be etched in granite. And so finally today, before I get to questions, let me offer you my thanks on behalf of my colleagues everywhere for allowing me to share this message with you and to leave you with one final thought. If our compassion as peace officers is a source of our strength, imagine what we can do together when we add your compassion to that mix. Take that home with you today, let it resonate, and bring you as much comfort as it brings us perseverance. And then let us come together as a community, as partners in this thing called life, to bring that compassion and, as a result, our combined strength, hope, fellowship, and love wherever we may go. Thank you. Okay, who's going to ask me the first uplifting question after that, right? So I have, it's towards the end of the season, and these are our last few remaining Bradenton baseball buddies. Each one of these cards is good for 4 regular season tickets to a Rays game, except for the Chicago Cubs, and a Slurpee. 4 tickets. And so I've got about 6 of them to hand out. Questions, whoever, or I'll just give them to you. But if nobody has any questions, so. She told me I had to stand up here for 5 minutes and answer questions. So. I have 100. I'm authorized for 120 right now. I'm down to 118. I have lots of applicants, but I'm pretty picky. If it means I have to go short until I find just that right person, I'm willing to do that. So we're down to right now, but we're looking.
Well, the Bradenton Kiwanis made a bag of cookies for each one of the sheriffs, so we would like to do it for each one of your offices.
Oh, well, if that's the case, I have 125 officers. Wait, 140. I'd love that. Thank you.
Would you comment on the resources for your department? Do you have what you need? And if somehow we could increase your resources, what would be the first thing that you would want to add? We do pretty good. The Mayor Poston, probably the best boss I've ever worked for in my entire 31-year career in law enforcement, does a great job. Carl Callahan of giving us what we need in the budget. We're not a huge city. We do have limited funding, and because of that, we also have some access to forfeiture and seizure funds. We also just recently created a foundation. We partnered with the Manatee Community Foundation and created the Bradenton Blue Foundation, and that's it's a fledgling one. It's just really been up for about 6 months. We don't even have a board yet, but that money will be earmarked to do exactly what I can't do with any of my stuff, which is help officers in times of need, critical incidents, and also for community events. We love to get out in our community. We love to interact with our kids. You always hear me saying that they're our future leaders. They're going to be making decisions for all of us. So the more we can interact and positively impact them, the better. We're going to be using some of that money to do more things with them, have more events, more mentoring opportunities. That being said, we do okay. We have recently, over this, I've been there a year and a half now, and felt like we could probably improve in our preparedness and Thank goodness. The weird thing is I told everybody 6 months ago I have a really bad feeling about this hurricane season. So I'd like to gather you all up. Let's start committee meetings. Let's get some new policies drafted. And we finished those about 3 weeks ago, if you can imagine. I don't know where that came from. But anyway, that as well as some protest, peaceful protest planning, created a new unit, bought some new uniforms for them, the turtle gear. You hate to have to plan for things like that, but as I told my mayor when he was looking at the overtime, counter going this past week, and I said, it's never going to make front page headlines that you over-prepared, but it sure will if you under-prepared. And so I'm trying to kind of get my folks geared up with some better equipment to deal with, some of the protest activities that you're seeing happening throughout the nation, to make sure that if it does happen here locally, that from an equipment standpoint and a safety standpoint, that we're there for them. So I don't know that I really answer the question other than to say, here's the answer that I should say. My mayor's given me everything I need. And I really believe that, though. There's little things, but like I said, I think we have enough funding sources that if I feel like we need it, we get it. We have a pretty supportive city and community, and I think BPD is, we're learning, we're growing, but we're getting to exactly where we need to be.
John?
Is the death by gunfire directly related to the opioid epidemic, or is there anything you can tie it back to, or that law enforcement has tied it back to?
We don't really know why it's happening. I think it probably goes back to the third point maybe, is that the world that I was raised in, to respect and honor our law enforcement officers, maybe is evolving a little bit. I mean, who knows? I could sit up here probably for 30 minutes and argue that it's video games, right? Or who knows? It's television shows. It's concerning, though. It's concerning. It's one thing when an officer is involved in a car crash and loses their life, but car crashes happen to everybody, and they're unfortunate. But to see the amount getting slain by gunfire, I don't know that we could tie that back to opioid. I mean, I think that's its own separate issue, and those aren't really the people that are causing us a problem. Half the time they're, passed out or as docile as can be. It's not really that group, and I wish I knew. If I did, I could keep our cops a heck of a lot safer.
Commissioner Bennett?
Had a report from the sheriff in regards to the demonstration that we had over the Confederate monument. I didn't hear from the police from Bradenton PD. I wonder if you could just give us kind of your perspective on that event, on whether you felt like you were prepared or you felt that you were in danger. I know there were a lot of resources from the sheriff's side, and that was something that we took into consideration. But I hadn't heard from the Bradenton PD your involvement.
Yeah, so that was the sheriff's operation, and that's on its face what it looked like, but know that the sheriff and his command staff and my command staff met for many hours and all the days preceding that. It was really a joint operation. They took control and command of the interior perimeter, us the exterior perimeter, and I will tell you that, and I'm sure he would agree if he was standing here, that we really melded our two forces just wonderfully. We came up with decisions, he and I, at the last minute based on what was happening around the nation. He's probably more of a let's do this, and I'm researching, okay, what's going on, what's the latest and greatest. The dump trucks, right? We knew that just a couple weeks before the incident where the pedestrians had gotten run over, and so the sheriff and I were like, let's get some dump trucks out there, and he calls me, Melanie, I don't have any dump trucks. And I said, well, I think I do. So we really worked just well together, and what a lot of people don't know is that we've been training together as well for just that type of occurrence. Started that about 6 months ago, and we were pleased from a police operations standpoint. Anytime you can leave a protest where nobody is hurt, everybody had the opportunity to exercise their free speech, no officers injured, then it's a success. Now, it doesn't mean that feelings don't get hurt on both sides. is what it is. But we were pleased that happened like that. So again, maybe some would critique and say, you know, you over-prepared, you had too many officers, but we sure didn't make front page news with that, right? We would have, though, if we hadn't been prepared. Thank you, sir. Oh,
Now, I might have heard, come over here.
I'm very excited about this.
Do you want to tell them about how you feel about the Kiwanis Golden Rule? You may have one of these.
Excuse me.
Go ahead.
So I get asked to speak a lot, and I try to kind of parcel out my time. And Heather called my assistant and said, "We want you to speak." And I said, "Well, have I spoken there before?" Whatever. And it just so happened we were going through the budget process. Well, those of you who do budgets, I'm sure, you know the best tool that you have during a budget is a ruler, right? Well, I get to Bradenton, I have my first budget meeting with all my folks. They've never really been involved in the budget process, and I'm the only one who shows up with a ruler. But boy, don't I have a ruler. I pull out that gold ruler, and I said, someday you too will have a gold ruler, but now I'm the only one with a gold ruler. So when Rose told me that, no, this is the Kiwanis Club that gives out gold rulers, all my people know that the person who does the best budget this year may get my second gold ruler.
I think I got her to speak by saying there might be another golden ruler in it, so I don't know. With that, Chief Bevan, I would like to present you with your second Kiwanis Golden Rule. She is undoubtedly a leader, and I think you can all see the Bradenton Police Department in our community is in good hands with her.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to get my ruler.
And with that, we are adjourned.